Thank you, Rabbi. Thank you for everything. You should know I'm the only guy that got the rabbi not to eat meat for one weekend at my house over Shabbat. He ate vegetables for the first time in his life. Rabbi, our interest is to keep you young. So obviously, the rabbi, I can't begin to tell you how much Rabbi Kramer has changed my life. Unfortunately, today, we have a 60% intermarriage rate. 90% people are not affiliated. So I said, I'm not going after Chabad, I'm going after the 90% of the people that need to get taught. And I said, how can I bring down Rabbi Nachman's teachings to a practical level? Obviously, if I'm a rabbi, they're not going to listen to me. So I said, let me become a spiritual advisor. I said, it's almost like going undercover. And that's what I've been doing the past 3-4 years. Unfortunately, Rabbi Nachman's teachings, what really got to me was, fixing the Brit. And realizing that without fixing the Brit, that's what's cooling off our youth today. What's cooling off? How would a guy all of a sudden today want to intermarry without a problem? What's cooling him off so much? What's getting him? Does it make sense? If our souls are coming from such a high place, what's cooling everybody off? And that's the issue. So that's why we've had, I've created a WhatsApp group, but I've created like a 40-day Tikkun HaKlali challenge. Without the shame, without the yush, more in a practical sense where people can say, you know what, I'm ready for the 40-day challenge. And after 40-day challenges, you've had people all of a sudden change the way they think and change everything about their lives. So again, without Rabbi Nachman's teachings that said, sexual immorality leads to poverty, I don't know where I would be. We read the story about the turkey prince. I was the turkey underneath the table. And I was the one eating crumbs. And now I see people eating crumbs. And I could not relate to them. I could say, you know what, I know where you've been. I know how to help you. There's no yush. And I've had people change in 40 days, they've changed their lives. I've had guys all of a sudden drop non-Jews, drop Arabs, and start dating Jewish. So the residual value that I'm getting today, it's an unbelievable thing. I own a 56-bed drug and rehab facility. One of the things that got me to start doing the classes was I would see a lot of kids in my rehab, a lot of kids that were Hasidish. And I'm like, how did you get here? What in the world got you to come to want to be out of your mind that you should want to go and, God forbid, try to kill yourself? So we deal a lot with trauma. We deal a lot with a lot with yush. And the number one thing I really work on, and realize, why did Reb Nachman speak so much about a Zamra? He kept on telling us, you have to live with a Zamra. Because if you don't love yourself, you're going to end up losing yourself. And that's the real problem today. If a person does not love himself, why doesn't he love himself? Because of the failures in the past. Today, unfortunately, people have failures, and instead of using them as strength, growth, they stick the failures on top of the head, and they say, I'm worthless. And they want to go hide from the pain. Through food addictions, whatever addictions you call it today. So I'm telling them, listen, failure is part of life. Just because your situation is broken doesn't mean you're broken. So without getting them to believe in themselves, it means nobody will change today unless they start to begin who they like he or she is. So once you start getting people to arouse their nikudot tovot, then they start getting momentum. And through momentum, magic happens. I don't need to tell a guy that lost 40 pounds, by the way, you should go dress better. Or you should go get a haircut. He's going to do it himself. So I knew all I had to do is get the guy to start loving himself through a Zamra, and then momentum will do its place. And I think that's today. Unfortunately today, people are only drowned because they don't love themselves. And Reb Nachman, a beautiful story that I remember from Reb Nassan, and he says there was a couple. Reb Nassan was walking with one of his students, and he noticed the guy that his whole house was burnt. And he says, what are you wasting your time? The whole house is burnt. He says, you see the way the guy's picking up the pieces? That's the way you have to pick up the pieces. That means that we all have had trauma in our lives. We've had houses that burnt. God forbid, we've had divorces. We've had children off the derech. We've had businesses that failed. etc., etc., etc. Our job is to pick up the pieces. Not why me, but what's next? What's next? That's the difference between a victim and a hero. A victim says, why me? A hero says, what's next? If I could tell you today, Time magazine came out with an article. Who are the happiest people? Who do you think the happiest people are? They did an article. The people that bounce back quickest. That means the people that have the most resilience. The people that bounce back. The people that are able to turn their scars into metal are the ones that are making it today, across the board. So it's not intelligence today. It's emotional intelligence. And if the only way we can do that is through Rab Nachman's teachings that give, for example, lesson 65, which Viktor Frankl's whole message, if you find meaning in the suffering, there's no suffering anymore. That means what's the big key is our perception. How are we looking at suffering? What's the purpose of this problem? Why is my mother-in-law in my house for 2 months? Is it to cleanse me out, Hashem? What's the purpose? That means it's basically all our perceptions. That means I am the one who labels things. That means nothing has meaning unless the meaning I give to it. Very similar to what the rabbi said, which is lesson 49. That means nothing has meaning. I'm the one giving meaning to things. So unfortunately, if I don't have the right perception, then I'm looking at that God is doing something to me instead of for me. If you have that attitude that God is doing something to you instead of for you, then all of a sudden, what are you going to do? You're going to avoid Hashem instead of approach Hashem. Big key. If you, for example, if you view life as a challenge, you're going to say, bring it on. If I view life as a threat, what am I going to say? Oh my God, I have anxiety. Your core beliefs determine everything. And that's why Rab Nachman's message is always, you have to quickly go from the Dalet to the Hey. You have to go from Mochim Kadnut to Mochim Gadlut. Because when you have Mochim Kadnut, you have the name Elokim. If you have Mochim Gadlus, you invoke the name of Kel and Yurke Vavke. You invoke the name of Chesed. So if our job is to really reframe. One thing we do in therapy is we get the guy to reframe the picture. You're looking at it this way, you need to look at it this way. Why is my wife so difficult with me? Why is, etc. It's all the whole purpose is to bring us closer to Hashem. If we understand that, then there's no problems. That means our problems are really, we look at things a different way. You know, one of the lessons that really changed my life was really lesson 82 also, which if you understand that that Rab Nosson says that we came to this world in disorder, and our job is to make disorder into order. How can I make disorder into order? Only through humility. So for example, a person has a lot of disorder in his life. Where's the most of the disorders coming from today? Expectations. I expected my wife to do this for me. I expected this to happen. I expected the deal. I expected that. What we need to do is we need to turn our expectations into appreciations. Just like the rabbi said, in 1 second, you can shift from an expectation to an appreciation. How? Through koach ma. We know the name of humility represents ma, which is this is one of my favorite lessons. The gematria of ma is 45, right? We know Adam represents 45. When Chava came into the world, she represented disorder into the world. The name of Chava is a numerical value of 19. So I tried to take these deep teachings and make them into a very practical tzimtzum. So if you look at any time you have a disorder in your life, things are out of order, it's because what's missing? You took the 26 out of the picture. Very simple. If something's not right in my life, if something's chaotic in my life, things are not going the way it's going, what did I do? Instead of crowning Hashem, I took the crown for myself. So what do we need to do? We need to put the 26 back in the picture. For example, how do I put the 26 back in the picture? I turn an expectation into appreciation. Instead of focusing on what I don't have, I focus on what I have. So if we just take a practical tool, anything that's going wrong, whether it's from a shalom bayit, whether it's money, expectations, etc., all we have to do is we have to realize there is a form of ga'ava that put us in disorder. So all we need to do is we need to go back to ma. And it's funny. Who's the richest guy in China? Jack Ma. Jack Ma. He's humble, he's rich. Jack Ma. That means anytime. And it's funny, the number 2 richest guy in China is Pony Ma. So we see the key is going back to Ma, because the whole sin with Chava happened with Gava. How do I practically get my life in order? Only through humility. It might require bittul. It might require, just like Rav Nosson says in lesson 65, taking the little seed and putting it into the ground. Until that seed goes into the ground, it will never become a tree. That means we have to accept things. We can't blame people. We have to accept. So that's the lesson that I've lived this whole year. I've turned all my expectations into appreciations. I started focusing on what's right, not what's wrong. And I had so much more energy in my life. And the key is, it's good you can have a bad hour, but not a bad day. That's lack of mindfulness. So when we're able to, we get an emotion that we don't like. It's funny because the word emotion in Latin, it means to move. That means you have an emotion you don't like. You're not supposed to sit and dwell and think about the worst case scenario. You're supposed to move. That's what the word in Latin words. You get an emotion you don't like. If you feel sad, why do you feel sad? Expectation. If you feel angry, somebody angered you. Find the nekudat tova on the guy. Just because the way somebody else feels about himself doesn't mean that's the way I feel about me. Can somebody force you to have blue eyes? Can somebody force you to have blue eyes? Somebody made me angry. No. You made yourself angry. That means we have the ability to respond. It's funny, the word responsibility is the ability to respond to every situation. So again, it's not one class. That's why I've seen people, we have a WhatsApp group with 7,500 people. The people that really listen, they opened up their perception. That means, technically, you can't have mercy on a person who has no dot. So that's what the number one thing I'm teaching people. I need to teach you dot. If you have dot, your perception is going to open, your ego is going to be lowered, and you're going to get help. Because if a guy says, no, I don't want to listen to this, what happens? He has a big ego. Big egos have small perception. But once the guy's open to change, he's open to look at things differently, then you could see how his life changes. So it's amazing to see. And again, all we're doing in therapy is getting the addict from going from disorder into order. What happens? He gets a big lesson on humility. So it's funny how you see that in Rab Nachman's lesson. It's all about humility. That means maybe I saw the situation differently. Or for example, you see today, people giving up after 2-3 shots. You see how many people, I had a football player in my rehab the other day. He was a college football player. And I asked him, why did you try to kill yourself? He says, I got into 2 colleges. I tried to get into 2 colleges, they rejected me. He said, Michael Jordan tried to get into 9 colleges. He tried 9 times. He tried much more than you. Why is your level 2? So Rab Nachman's message is, you don't stop. We continue, we continue, we continue. That means an arrogant person quits, a humble person continues. Today, one of the number 1 selling books is called Grit. And she talks about Angela Duckworth talks about the science of successful people throughout. 2 key elements: passion and perseverance. That's Rab Nachman of Breslov. So may Hashem help us that we should develop grit. We should turn our scars into medals. We should become, instead of victims, heroes. Because unfortunately we forget who we are. That's the problem. That's the exchange children. We forget where we come from. We forget the godless. So that's why I'm trying to teach people to go back to the roots through resilience, through strength, through memuna, through humility. That's today's class.